Welcome to the Our Finest Pour podcast. On episode number 1, we have sommelier extraordinaire Igal Amsallem, and we have Palatine Hills Estate Winery winemaker Tim Reilly.
I'm the territory sales manager for the Niagara region. So working for more than a year now. Started in February last year. And I'm also sommelier, wine and spirit educator, so I'm working on different sides of the market, but mainly focusing on licensees, so selling Palatine Hills wines to restaurants and hotels, banquet halls, golf clubs, and also promoting wine, but also the winery through private clientele. Starting to organize some wine events, winemaker dinners, running a lot of wine shows or wine dinners in the area with other organizers, and technically promoting the winery. So this winery has been Palatine Hills Winery was created in mid 1970s by Barbara and John Lofeld. So it's a winery that has a pretty tight relationship with history. On the very same spot in 1812 during the war, the 1812 war, there was an Irish captain who settled his troops here on the spot and who was fighting along with the British Army. And so we found when at the time of the when engineers surveyed the land here before planting the vines, discovered a lot of artifacts from these Irish troops that were settled here. And so the Irish captain who settled here was coming from Ireland, from Palatine Hills, Ireland. And the reason why, so the name of the winery was associated to this little Irish village where this Irish captain came from, and we also named so one of our wines like 1812, just as a homage to this important historical event here in the region. And since then, so the winery has been focusing mainly on selling grapes. So the Lofeld family is a grape farmer family primarily, and then after they moved to the wine production. So the total size of the vineyard is around 100 acres, divided in different plots, growing white and red varietals, adapted to a pretty warm climate here. So we have a couple of cool climate varietals as well, but mainly, namely. Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, Riesling, Pinot Gris, Gewürztraminer for the whites, and for the reds, Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, Merlot, and so those are the main varietals that we grow at the property. We are located on the warmest spot of the Niagara-on-the-Lake square region, so that brings us a lot of great advantage in terms of ripening process. We reach really phenomenal levels of ripeness, but in the same time we are blessed because the terroir here is close to the lake, so we get a nice lake effect. So that cools down the vineyards during the hot days. The other thing that we have to make sure is just not having too much moisture. That can be harmful to the vines, and that can develop some vine diseases or fungus. But most of the grapes that we grow here are really very high quality grapes. So the reason why really we are Palatine Hills is one of the really top quality best grape producer in the region, and then selling part of the other part of the production to wine through direct to consumers through our wineries boutique and through licensees. So we are four reps covering essentially the province, and promoting, selling, and making people more interested to come and to visit the winery. So as a wine educator, for me, it's not only just selling wine, but it's also selling not education, but selling you a bit of knowledge about the wine. The more you know about the wine, the more you appreciate it, the more you buy it. Whether it's like from private consumers or from licensees. If they are comfortable with the wine, with the price that they sell the wines, and they like the wines, that's the best recipe to make good business in both for both kinds of clientele. And on the top of that, really, it's working within a family environment. It's way more for me. It's way more rewarding. First, you have like really more freedom to there's more space for innovations, for initiatives here. So you can develop a lot of different activities and different strategies that we share all ideas with the owners, with the family. So now I'm dealing with my two bosses are John Jr. And Charles Nofeld, and working with them it's great because really they are very open to really to find new ways, new techniques, new strategies to sell wines and I believe that my colleague Tim will agree with that and will say the same in terms of like winemaking. We have much more freedom here to work in and at the same time it's more challenging but it's more rewarding, so we don't have like too much like restrictions of work or sales objectives to reach. It's just that really we want to, and we are still working on building that big clientele, whether it's like private consumer or restaurants. So we've been a bit like during many years we were not really that visible in the market. So a lot of people today are still asking us, if we are new. So the name Palatine Hills is not like very famous like other bigger players in the wine market, but we have a great asset with the wines, with the grapes that we grow, and as soon as people really get to discover us, either private consumers or licensees, they are amazed by what we have. Not only the quality but also the price. We are extremely competitive compared with many other producers, quality wise and price wise. As soon as people really get to know us, now after almost a year and a half of working in the industry here, I realize that it's a great gold mine that we still have not reached the peak of profitability. So reason why it's very motivating, very self-rewarding as well to work with a winery that has a big potential that hasn't been entirely exploited.
You were talking earlier about the different types of grapes, and even you're showing me out in the vineyard there just like a 3-foot hill, and you were saying even that change in elevation changes the temperature 0.7 degrees Celsius, which affects the grapes. So if you were to choose kind of like your perfect storm of varieties or of variables, what would you be looking for kind of like the perfect conditions to have this kind of a vineyard?
Well, yeah, it's always, to have the perfect exposure in the vineyard, it depends, of many factors, but exposure, water drainage, so sun exposure, water drainage, and altitude makes always a big difference, either because you have more influence from, you are a bit more elevated, so you get maybe more breeze, so more like at night you can have a bigger like a breeze or a cooling effect that is that can have actually a very positive effect on the vines, and also better sun exposure eventually, and water drainage as well. When you are on top of a hill or on the slope, you get during the wet days when it's raining a lot, so you don't get all that moisture really standing on the flat area. So you have even at a very very low degree of slope, you have still a good enough water drainage. We're not keeping too much moisture on the ground. That would not be the best situation for the vines, as they are pretty sensitive to a lot of different diseases due to too much moisture. And so definitely always and I believe all those the vintners who are working in the vines understand the importance of as soon as you have a little hill or a little even a small a few meters higher than the rest of the vineyard, it can make a difference. Sometimes it's very doesn't need to be like 200 300 feet high little hills to make a big difference. But here, really, we're lucky to have a beautiful, really great spot that allows really all those vines all those varietals that we grow here are varietals that are not only that fit, the spot, the weather pattern, but also the soil. So here it's a very rich soil. It's a clay and loam. And it's a soil that really some of the red varietals that I mentioned before and white varietals are thriving. So you can find with the white varietals, for example, our Chardonnay is totally different than the Chardonnay that you can find on the escarpment, which is mainly like limestone. So limestone Chardonnay will bring a totally different flavor spectrum than like a Chardonnay that grew on the like clay or loam or sediment soil. So, but we don't grow any Pinot Noir, any Gamay here because it's not the best spot for them. So they like really more softer and less fat soil. So more like mainly limestone and more cool climate, so more altitude. So reason why you might find some more Pinot Noirs on the escarpment or on the mid slopes of the Lincoln Lakeshore area there, or on the Vineland Ridge that are much more adapted areas there for growing those more subtle red varietals.
How many let's try that again, Tim. How many harvests would you say you get a year? Is it just one a year?
Just one a year.
Just one a year, and that's we're talking to the gentleman downstairs. 2-3 months, kind of goes for like about 2 months.
2 months, yeah. Usually it's 2 months, depending on which varieties ripen. So year to year it can be short and compressed, and other years it can go on forever, it seems.
Is there any difference in terms of time investment with the red versus white versus the different grapes overall?
Just timing and picking. I mean, it's pretty consistent throughout the region. You're going to see most of the Bordeaux reds come off, October, usually, and sometimes into November as well. So it's coming up with strategies year to year. It's always different. Ripening is always at different times. So. It's really good in regards to the Newfelds. When I first came here, had a reputation for the vineyards and the grapes and the quality of grapes, so that was really attractive to me. And I came from a very large US-based winery where I did a lot of research, but it was never something I wanted to finish off my career at. This is the perfect spot. It's a combination of a small family. They're receptive to different styles of wines. They're receptive to planting new varieties to try out. There's Viognier, there's Sauvignon, even some Syrah that are planted small lots just to see what we can do. So they're not against experimenting in the region, which is nice because I still keep that. But for me, it was more getting back into small batches and reserve wines, where before I was into large commercial batches and. So this is much more suited to me. So it's nice to actually start to get reserve wines out because it's been a number of years since I put reserve wines out. So it's a good fit.
Excellent. Can you guys talk about the barrels and the aging process?
Sure. We use a combination of French and American oak. There's a little Hungarian this year. We do only one white as it stands in barrel. That's the Chardonnay. The reds, it's mainly Merlot, Cab Sauv, and Cab Franc, and of course a blended heritage. Typically we'll go in for 18 months would be my time, but we taste them as we go because there's a peak, and I don't think there's any particular recipe for it. I think that part of it is the artistry, and that's your taste and your palate is what determines when it's time to come out of the barrel.
So no risk of your position be taken over by AI at any time soon.
No. Here I like where I am in this because it is a small winery for me. So I'm doing everything. I'm doing the lab. I'm doing the move, up to even cleaning tanks, and that's something that I really enjoy. I like having the whole scope. I don't, particularly like the large one where you sit at a desk. This is more hands-on, and that's something that I like. So, there's always young guys coming up, right? So.
But even just the maturity of the wine, or just that the flavor profile, you have to continually taste it, right? And it has to, and just from that taste experience what when would be appropriate to move on to the next step.
Yeah, and it's not just a barrel; it's with any wine. When you're tasting, it's important to taste all the time, so that you know where the wine is and where it's going, and if you need to do something proactively to avoid any issues. So.
Excellent. Igal, you mentioned they're not new oak barrels, so they're.
Well, there are some, but we try not to use like 100% new oak because as I mentioned earlier, so we have a fantastic fruit expression that we don't want to overwhelm with too much new oak. So we use, and Tim will confirm that we use some like second, so 2 or 3 years old barrels, just to bring just enough, structured body to the wine, and having a beautifully integrated oak into the fruit. And we have a very good example with our 2016 Reserve Chardonnay, which no later than last weekend, doing a progressive dinner in downtown Niagara-on-the-Lake, people were stunned. They were expecting like so much oak, and so much like heavy passion fruit, something, and a wine a bit like really very, very fat, but they discovered instead a beautiful, refined, beautiful, elegant Chardonnay, even though it's a reserve. And that makes a whole difference. And there's not a lot of Chardonnays made of our style that really, that are at the same time more like an all continent style, so more like a European style Chardonnay than a New World Chardonnay, New World style Chardonnay. Here, what I like with the winery is really they understood that really it's not about producing grapes and selling wine at a very high price because of they made sure the wines in like 100% French oak or 100% American oak for like 12 months, 24 months. And then after they justified this process in like overpricing the wines. So here really understand that really the Nofel family and the whole team here works very hard enough in the vineyard to produce fantastic quality of grapes that they just want to extract from those grapes the best expression, the best primary expression of the fruit before before deciding which varietal will have a certain like oak maturation. But first is really having the fruit forward, the fruitiness, the beautiful terroir expression in the glass before really maturing the wines in oak. So it's a very well studied, very well thought before using any oak for our reserve wines. But you can have a reserve wine with a beautiful fruit expression. Then after the oak always has to come in the second place. If not, you don't need to spend so much time all year long during the vines. You just buy some grape juice and you just put some chips or oak chips or some new oak, and you sell your wine at $60-$70 a bottle. Then, like, unfortunately, too many producers they do it in North America.
Yeah, no, I have to agree. I mean, you want to showcase in any wine, you want to showcase the fruit, not the oak. Anybody can buy a lot of barrels and hammer it with oak. That's not what we're doing here, and I think that was the philosophy that attracted me here. I know when I first came, John was saying he's like the over-tannic or the over-extracted reds, and I think with coming with that, there's a lot of things that come along with it that I'm not particularly in favor of. So I think, as Igal says, the oak is secondary, the fruit is primary, and that's the philosophy behind on the reserve wines. We're not going to hide stuff in it. We are going to use it as a complement, not as a mask.
What out of all the different wine regions, like what would be a defining characteristic of the Niagara region?
Compare with which region? So, in North America or in the world, or
Well, I guess in terms of cuisine, if you're in terms of the world.
well, Niagara region is first is kind of it's a cool climate style region. So because we have very long winters, but we have warm summers. So we have very very warm summers, but it's still considered like we are, despite the fact that we are in the same latitudes of certain wine regions in Europe, the style is different. It's still a pretty young region. We make wines here since, well, historically, I would say since 400 years, since the 1600s. But at that time, it wasn't wine made for like a commercial aspect. But more commercially speaking, it's more around like in 1960s, 1970s, really when the wine industry started. So the vines are, we are in the new world area. So there's a lot of know-how and knowledge coming from the old world. A lot of people who came here, settled here, and created wineries come from Europe. So a lot of some of those pioneers either we introduced the ice wine trend or the ice wine culture in Niagara. They came from Austria, so bringing their home knowledge or home know-how into the viticulture here, or bringing some varietals that were trying to plant some varietals that they used to grow in their native, I would say, in their homeland. So, but here I would say there's a wide variety of wines here in Niagara. We have different regions, so we have different VQA areas that are really distinct one to each other. That is interesting here. Niagara-on-the-Lake, we're on the flat land. We are actually on the seabed here. Like 25 million years ago, we were under like 40 meters of water. So the escarpment was actually the real lake shore. So here it was all water. So we get a fantastic geological heritage in terms of glacial sediments, and so the earth here is very very rich. So but it's also warmer because we are there's a lot of wind as well, but it's a warmer area compared with the top of the escarpment, which is around between 60 and 100 meters high. So that is interesting to appreciate the difference in terms of what Niagara can produce between the valley, I would say, so all the lake shore now, Lincoln Lake Shore and Niagara-on-the-Lake versus the escarpment, where really you can find a totally different style of wines. But on worldwide now, we are, it's still a young region here, so there's still a lot of, so the vines at the winery, our vines are around 25 years old. Some other wineries have older vines, but we are still on the viticulture scale compared with all continent countries. I would say, wine countries, we are still very young. So people are really interesting when I see a lot of people coming from Europe and discovering Niagara. Say, well, they never thought that Canada could produce some wines. They think, okay, it's so cold all year long, so it's not possible. But they discover that between here, but also when they come and visit Prince Edward County, they discover that Ontario has a couple of interesting spots to grow vines. But then after, they have to understand, it's a young region. It's not, we don't have a 25th century tradition of making wine here like we have in Europe. So it's, I believe that really we have, it's a very promising area here to really to grow vines, to grow and to make wine with a much higher and higher quality for the years to come. It's a great spot, but what is interesting as well is to keep this DNA from that it's Niagara. So we have minus 30 Celsius in winter. We have plus 40 Celsius in summer. So we are really in an extreme temperature pattern region that that brings and we have to deal with now with the global warming. We have to deal with some weather patterns that are changing very whimsically. So the weather becomes very whimsical, and we have to deal with that as well. Compared with other wineries in more like Southern America, where you find really a more constant vintage character, because of the weather pattern is almost the same year after year. You don't have that storms or weather issues that are not expected. Here we can get longer winters. We can get hailstorm in the middle of summer, and so we have to deal with more issues weather-wise. And unfortunately, sometimes it costs a lot. We can lose a lot, but Mother Nature is always the last word.
If you were to give it like a percentage, how much would you say from year to year vast weather changes like that can affect the taste of a wine from like a 2012 to 2013 or whatever the case is?
Vintage variation. I mean, that's always here. You're never going to get. You're not in some of these more moderate places where you're going to get consistent vintages over year. So every year is different, and that's what you'll find in Niagara is I haven't come across too many vintages that are exactly the same. There's always some nuances throughout the vintages in Niagara. So a lot of it has to do with the skill of the winemaker, because you're going to have to deal with different acidities, different maturities, and you're at the whim of the weather as well. So it has a huge effect on the wines themselves. So I think a lot of consumers that know Niagara wines kind of know the vintage variations, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. I think it's a good thing. We're finding our footing on stuff, but certain vintages will highlight and showcase a Riesling. Certain ones that are really hot, you'll get some Merlots and Castots that are outstanding. So it's a matter of taking what is nature's giving you and taking the best of those and creating your reserves out of those. So it's a strategy. You have to strategize with the vintages in Ontario.
Can you describe just the winemaking process from grapes on the vine to you have a bottle on the shelf ready to go?
Right. The Newfelds are really good at managing the vineyards, and we're lucky enough to have our own harvester. So we decide when to bring stuff in. So there's no rushing. We're not in a hurry. So we wait for optimal ripeness, and we bring it in as we want. So we have full control of the vineyards in and of the process. With the whites, they typically there's a Sangay that we'll use for some of the reserves. So we'll bleed off, and then the rest will be fermented stainless steel. We do the shards occasionally fermented in barrel, but that's more of a rare case. For the reds, we're fortunate enough that usually around end of October, November, it's a little cool, so we can do cold soaks before we start fermentation and press off. So we're fairly fortunate, I think, in the harvest. The harvests have been kind, I think, in the last few years, whether the summers were wet or cool, and that's where you get your variations. But for the most part, by the time you get to harvest, the maturity and the phenolics in the grapes are pretty well set. So yeah, it gives you a strategy to work. Each variety will have its own strategy.
Nice. Can you talk about Igal, you were showing me some of the wines earlier, and you have several that have won some awards. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. So we started to present different wines to different contests. So it started a couple of years ago, and so this year we have four wines. So we have our from Wine Alliance, so the 2018 Wine Alliance contest. We got the Riesling got the silver medal. Also we have our Chardonnay Reserve 2016 Reserve Chardonnay Neufeld Vineyard that got the Intervine. So it's more like international wine contest silver medal award. We also got our Vidal Ice wine with a silver medal from Intervene as well, and a gold medal with for our Merlot Reserve 2012 vintage from I believe Wine Line. And so we are just about to apply to present some new wines to other contests. So it's very encouraging to see that we get so many awards for in a single like contest. Like we got like four medals, you know. So it shows really that our wines are really thriving and are really surprising people. Receiving awards really helps to market, to sell more. There's definitely a more attractive point of interest to try the wines. People are sensitive to those medals because it's a sign of really a recognition sign of really people appreciate, professional people appreciate our products, the quality, the know-how behind. And so we look forward in the coming years to have more wines awarded, and we will be really glad to share all those great wines with either with our private consumers or licensees. But definitely it makes an interesting point even for licensees to sell like an awarded wines and non-awarded wines, even though the non-awarded wines taste good, but it's a kind of marketing plus for them just to present the wine with a little silver medal or a little award on the side.
How did you guys get into this?
Oh jeez.
How many days do you have?
For myself, I was in the military for a number of years. I was with the Special Forces, and I picked up winemaking when I was in Italy. I spent some time in Ancona, and I learned off an Italian winemaker there. And when I came back and I got out of the military, I knew some people in the industry in Niagara, so I worked. One of the guys told me that some of the best winemakers learn from the vineyards up. So I started in a number of vineyards, understanding the vineyards and the grapes, and I worked in wineries. Fortunate enough to work under some great winemakers. I worked under Carlo Negri, who was from northern Italy. He was probably the biggest influence. I spent a number of years assisting under him, and I took over when he retired. So lots of influences there, and so I've been doing it now for over 20 years. It's been an interesting go because it's there's always different perspectives, and I've moved from doing reserves and in high volumes to doing commercial and doing research. When I was with the US-based winery consortium, I was fortunate enough to do a lot of lectures in California and do a lot of research, not on grapes from California, of course, but on grapes that are from here. So I have a good understanding of the chemistry that's coming out, the green flavors, the red flavors, how to strategize and not have any particular green wines, which I really detest. So it's been a learning process, and I think the culmination has brought me here, and I think I'd like to bring some of those experiences to here, and the family here are very receptive to some of the crazy things that we try. So
very cool. If I can ask, was your military service in the U.S. or in Canada?
I was here. I was with Constellation in Niagara, but I did a lot of research on all different kinds of things like phenolics and rose, characters in reds and Bordeaux reds, and as well as Flash Détente. They sent me to Chile to research Flash Détente, where I met up with some guys that at that time from Gallo that were looking into the same technology. It's an older technology, but it's been refined, and it does definitely have its use in a large commercial capacity. But there was an understanding that came out of that as well.
Excellent. Sir, in preparation for today, I did a little bit of scoping on you and saw that you've been into it since you were 4.
Yeah.
More or less. You kind of grew up.
So coming from a multicultural United Nations family in France, but I'm a copyright lawyer originally, so nothing to see really with wine. But I came to Canada to work in music copyright and didn't work out. And coming from a very knowledgeable family in wine and gastronomy, food, and I inherited a fantastic knowledge about wine, fine wine, mainly French wine. As you know, in France, there's only French wines in the world. You know, France is the only wine country in the world. So, but I came to when I decided to come to Canada with a great job opportunity in the copyright, in music copyright law. That happened that it didn't work out for me. So, and the possibilities to work in the music copyright in Canada at that time in the early 2000s were pretty limited. So I just did a little brainstorming on myself and telling myself, okay, what else I can do in Canada outside copyright law? I didn't want to be a lawyer really to get the bar exam and everything. I studied enough in France my goal wasn't really to come and still keeping studying in Canada. So, and I needed some money right away to survive, to pay rent and everything. So I started to run some tastings in downtown Montreal, so just to be able to make a bit of money and to pay my rent. And then after people were pretty interested, very amazed by my presentation about French wines, and I was featuring all the wine regions. I know I've been traveling extensively since my very childhood all over France. So there's not a single region that I don't know in France. There's not a single specialty that I don't know in France. So thanks to a very traveling father that was taking all his family when he was traveling all over the country. So I got to know since the age of 4 all those regions, all those specialties, all those characteristics, all those cultural heritage in each French region. So, and I, growing with all this knowledge, from childhood to more as a teenager, I never really realized that when one day it would really help me that much. And I was trained. I was lucky to have a couple of uncles who were very, very knowledgeable in wine, who had fantastic wine cellars, and they taught me everything when I was visiting them. And it happened to be that I collected so much information about wine and food but I wasn't that passionate by wine. And so I started my job as a sommelier. Technically, is a profession that is intimately linked to passion. But my passion, and I have to say very straightforward, that my passion came along when I decided to work as a sommelier. People were identifying me as a sommelier, and I was saying, no, I'm sorry, I'm just a jobless lawyer in Canada. But they realized that, and I realized that actually I could make money and sharing what I learned. And so I reinvented my life, a new life in Canada. So hardly burying my past career and embracing a new career, brand new opportunities. And in Quebec, Montreal at the early 2000s, still now people are very, very eager to learn, very willing to learn. So when they have somebody who can really share, not educate, but share what he knows about wine and food. So I realized that it was, I identified like a strength that I have that I didn't actually know that I had that before. But so sharing what I learned during all those years with my family and traveling so much, and so I realized that I could just share my experience and my knowledge about that. And at the same time, I was learning about New World wines. I came to Canada. I had no clue that Canada was making wine. I had no clue that Australia or Chile or Argentina or South Africa or Australia, all those countries, because I was just trained with only French wine, not even Italian or Spanish wine. So it was like, for me, it was a double challenge, because I realized that Canada is a bit more open, has a much more open mindset of in terms of wine. So when you get to visit all those government liquor stores, and you find so many wines from so many countries compared with France that has nothing. They have like 99.5% of their wine rows or wine departments in grocery stores are French, and 0.5% is foreign wines. So, but here it's all like, so for me it was like, wow, a big eye opener situation that I had to learn a lot. So, and people considering me, identifying me as a sommelier, and my friends were telling me, well, you know, people think you are sommelier, so get your sommelier diploma. So, and I tell them, I didn't come to Canada to get a sommelier diploma. I'm a lawyer, so I don't want to be just a sommelier. But then after I realized that that's something that really I like to do, actually. I was making good money and just sharing my passion, sharing my knowledge. And so I did my sommelier diploma in Quebec, and then did my graduated, and then created my own business, and had the chance to meet a lot of interesting people, very influential people in the wine industry in Quebec, who opened me the doors to other businesses. And I started to build my reputation there. So then I moved to British Columbia, and I started it all again, a new wine career there, working as a fine wine and spirit boutique manager, you know, for a private liquor store in Vancouver, and working for the French Trade Commission, so introducing wineries from France to the Western Canadian market. Running conferences and seminars in France and in Western Canada with delegations of wine producers, vintners, viticulturists, or winemakers who wanted to get more familiar with the Western Canadian market system. And and so during those 19 years in Canada, I've been working in every single province. I was working for major fine wine companies, agencies, and running a lot of tasting events, private, corporate, and running a lot of fundraising events for major charity causes, for major projects. And when I came to Toronto, first before coming to Niagara-on-the-Lake, so I got hired by one of the most respected fine wine agencies in Canada, which is Lifford Wines and Spirits. And actually, they hired me in Toronto, but I was back to the West. I was training all the sales teams in Western Canada between Winnipeg and Victoria. So I was most of the time traveling in Western Canada and really staying in Toronto. And when I was in Toronto, I had another hat as a whiskey brand ambassador for Morrison Beaumont. So I was running a lot of whiskey tastings and whiskey masterclasses all over the country again as a whiskey guy. And the only job that I didn't do as a sommelier in the wine industry ever was working directly for a winery. And I was a bit tired, and I know that my colleagues, they think I'm crazy. But I left the fine wine. I was working mainly with a very ultra premium fine wine industry, selling very expensive Grand Cru classes from Bordeaux, Burgundy, or other countries. And I just wanted to work for more simply, for a winery, for an Ontario winery. I never worked directly with a winery. So I've been repping wineries, but through an agency, not directly. So for me, it was like I wanted to make a break, take a break from the fine wine industry, which is very exciting, but sometimes, even though you work in the luxury side of the wine business, you're getting a bit tired. You want to come back to more simple, more local things, and that's what I did finding Palatine. I didn't want to work for big wineries. I had so much opportunities to work for major players, but I didn't want to be just a scene number. I just wanted to be Igal Amsallem and just to invent eventually my new job with the winery. And Palatine offered exactly what I was looking for. So for me, it didn't take long just to sign with them. And I'm very happy, even though it's small winery, people think, yeah, you're crazy. You left the fine wine world and you work for a little, family estate winery. Say, yeah, but I'm happy. So I find myself happy to do that. Because the wine world is not only selling Petrus, Margaux, Lafite, and Romanée Conti wines. It's also exploring the world, and as Tim did, accumulating experiences all over the world. It's the most enriching thing. Is discovering really all the levels of the wine business, of all the wine. The wine world is so vast and so exciting to discover. So that only working in a one branch or one single field of the wine business can be a bit boring. And I'm the kind of guy who likes really just challenges, but I likes changing as well. I've been living in 4 provinces since 19 years in Canada. Been working with those 10 provinces, so the 10 different monopolies with 10 different business mindsets, wine business mindsets that are totally different between Eastern Canada and Western Canada. So, and I'm still thirsty to learn and to discover some other, some other businesses, opportunities, because that makes actually your personal life very, very enriching, very exciting. So yeah, that's the adventure goes on.
Both of you, it seems like such a radical shift from special forces and from copyright law, which is also life or death. But to come into wine, if I can ask, how old were you guys when you made that radical shift?
Oh, for myself, I was just getting into my 30s. Yeah, just getting into my 30s when I started to get into wineries and learn a little bit more about wine. I mean, I had a base knowledge from my time in Italy, but I think quintessential was the training I had under some of these older winemakers, and especially Carlo and his Italian roots. He definitely had old world style, and I think that kind of translated. It's kind of mutated under me, and I have probably a little bit more desire to be a little bit more out there when it comes to some of the blends and trying different things, but for sure that's entrenched in how I make wine, for sure.
Yeah, for me, simply it was an accident, because I came to Canada with a job that didn't work. It was pretty unfortunate, but that what happened. So from day 1 to day 2, I had to find a solution, either staying in Canada or being back to France, back to my job that I could eventually do. But for me, it was just I decided to come to here. I like the country. That's where I want to live. So I have to. I've been really looking for other job opportunities in the same field, where like copyright law or copyright in different subcategories of the copyright law, but openings were very, very limited. So I decided that I couldn't stay just searching forever. So for me it was more like I've been on a survival mode for a couple of months until really I realized that I could do something different with my life here in Canada. So and here what helped me a lot that also that you can really, if you are really willing to reinvent your life, you can. And that's what I tell people. Sometimes people who are doing a job that they hate, who they really don't like, and you really see things differently. That when you are facing really, when you are crossing in your life, and all what you did, all those previous years, now you are facing a big obstacle. Some people really would either would really give away or give up and just enter in big depressions, when some others, they can tell themselves, what else I can do, what are my strengths, what I can do here, what I can bring to to the society. And that's really what I did. I'm not the kind of guy who's giving up or who's getting depressed, because even though it was a big kick in the face, I can tell you that I've been really but you reinvent yourself, and then starting from nothing, you can really rebuild a life, and even more exciting life. Copyright law is very interesting, but that exciting as wine. But so it's just sometimes you have events in your life that you don't forecast, that you don't predict, that happen, and you have to deal with them. And then after, when you believe in yourself with a bit of self-confidence, you can really achieve other things that you never thought at any second that you would do. If 25 years ago, people would have told me, you'll leave France as a lawyer, and you will live in Canada, and you will work in the wine industry as a sommelier, I would have laughed at you like crazy. I would have, you're just you're crazy. It's a good joke, but I'm not believing it. So, but that's exactly what happened. So, no destiny is really sealed in concrete, which actually makes life even more exciting. Even though it's hard, but you rebounce to something else, and when you really identify your strength, and again with the self-confidence, you can really achieve anything you want to do. And there's not a single day that I'm not happy to work in this field, in the wine world, because you still keep learning every day. There's always something to learn in the wine world. Nobody can pretend to know everything about wine in this planet. It's impossible. There's so many things to learn every day, to taste, to share with from other people, from other wine professionals at all the levels: sommeliers, bartenders, winemakers, you name them. But there's a lot of there, and that's really makes this job very exciting.
What's your favorite thing about the wine itself?
My favorite thing about wine itself, wine has a limitless potential because even from the same place, as Tim mentioned before, from the same spot you can have different wine expressions, flavors. You travel to the world of flavors, to the world of complexity, world of it's a travel by itself. Tasting wine is like traveling to a different dimension, flavor dimension, that really makes you appreciating really the beautiful gift Mother Nature gives us every year. Whether you are in Niagara-on-the-Lake, or you are in Burgundy, you are in Tuscany, you are in Barossa Valley, you are in Central Otago, New Zealand, you are in every single place, one place, vineyard. And I've been traveling the world extensively too since those 20 past years, and you realize that there's so much to learn through a glass of wine. Not only just the grape juice that has been fermented and then matured in wine barrels, but also the tradition. What the winemaker, you get to know people through the style of their wines they make. Wine is like I always say, it's a piece of work. It's like a painting. There's a winemaker, there's a designer behind the wine. So you get to know people through their style of wine. From winemaker to winemaker, you're in the same winery. From vintage to vintage, it's a different wine. So there's always, it's limitless. Wine is actually it's infinity of combinations of flavors, of complexity, of terroir style. So that really makes it actually, and I believe if you ask any wine professional, that's what he will really tell you. There's no limit to learn about wine, because every wine is different, even from the same spot, but a different vintage will give a different style of wine. So that's really what the magic of the wine. Getting to learn you never get the same wine ever, from vintage to vintage, from winery to winery. So it's an unlimited world of exploration that makes actually the path very exciting to take every day.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think each bottle, vintage to vintage, it's a story behind it. It's not only the story of the growing season. It's an expression of the owners. It's an expression of the winemaker, his style, what particularly that his strategy is for that vintage, what his vision is for that particular wine when it's coming in. So there's a lot that is in that bottle that you don't necessarily see, that you can taste and you get it through those senses, right?
You'd mentioned quite a bit downstairs about the fruitiness and the bold fruit of Palatine Hills. Would you guys say that's kind of like the signature of this winery?
It is now. I think the previous winemaker had a different approach. I have always strived for fruit-forward wines, and I think coming here, the family knew that, and we were both on board on what direction this winery is taking a different direction. You can see with renovations, the style that we're going for, and the particular story that we want to tell. Yeah, and I think that's also being expressed through the style of the wines as well. It's not only just about a different style of wine, it's also a story about where the winery's going and the direction that we see it going and our philosophies in that model.
Great.
And also sales-wise, it has a certain impact as well. We don't make wines to like a long-term cellaring wine style. So in Niagara, so the clientele in both clienteles, private consumers and restaurants, they want wines that deliver right away the fruit. People are not in Canada. People don't have that culture to cellar wines for a very long time. So the advantage here that we with the fantastic ripeness, the fantastic fruitiness that we get in our wines, we don't want to miss actually the magic in making wines a bit more austere or a bit more shy, that you need a certain time before really before opening a bottle. Here you open any bottle and you get actually really amazed, you get like wowed, as I say, by a fantastic flavor profile, flavor spectrum, as I said, and that's actually what people want. Combining a very good and attractive price point and a wine that delivers right away as soon as you open the bottle, and you have the pleasure. You create really, the wine creates the momentum of pleasure right away. You don't need to wait. You don't need to put it into a decanter. People here, when they are excited and at that price point that we sell our products, people, they just want now. It's a wine for fun, for every day. So, and that's our really the pleasure that you don't need. And coming from the fine wine industry, where you have a wine that you cannot open since before 15 years, so it's all about like theoretical information that you provide for a wine that is not ready to drink. So, but you deal with a different clientele who is willing to buy such wines. But here in Niagara, people, they just want to have fun with the wine that they just bought. I had 2 weeks ago in a previous wine event that was organized in downtown Niagara-on-the-Lake. Some people told me that they purchased the wine. They came to the winery on a Saturday afternoon. They were staying in the bed and breakfast at night, and they were thinking just to open one bottle, and they bought like 6 bottles of one of our 1812 red, and they drank them all the 6 bottles. So they came back on Sunday to get some more. So just to tell you that they loved the wine so much that they were a group of 4 people. They drank the 6 bottles right away. And he told me that, so yeah, so we came back on Sunday because we wanted to get some more for home, So that's the thing. That's really the thing that we want to do. It's just to please people, to create really the momentum of pleasure. That people like the wines, they have a good experience visiting either wineries or just having our wines in any restaurant that carries our products, and just enjoying it. And even restaurants, they do the same. They want the wine that just people say, oh yeah, on the first sip, they like it, they order eventually a second bottle. So a wine that delivers right away, and I believe that now with the new winemaking style with Tim, it is something. It's a winning strategy. That for the price point that we offer, for the style of wine that we offer, that's what people want. They just expect to have a wine that boom gives you really a good slap in the face of beautiful fruit, beautiful flavors, and that makes you feel good.
What's the best-selling wine that you guys do have? Is that the 1812?
Well, they are all great. They're all great, but their style, they are all like for having poured so many times all those wines. You find really people for any of the styles of wines that we make here. Last Friday there was a wine show at the Navy Hall, so the Riesling was like the number one in the show. People were coming for delicious Riesling, off-dry Riesling, delivering tons of fruit, very high acidity, very surprising. So I believe they came the next day here and they bought a lot. So it's just creating the wine momentum of pleasure, and making people with big smile when they have the first sip. They don't need just to, maybe, I'm not sure, don't hesitate. Here they deliver right away. and they deliver what you have on the label. What you have like a Riesling, if you know the flavor signature of a Riesling, that's what you get in the glass. Same for Chardonnay, same for Cabernet or Merlot or any varietal, you get what you have on the label. No trick, no cheating with the grapes. You really embrace the beautiful flavor signature of each variety.
I'll start by saying how I met you was at a work party where you ran us through a whiskey tasting, 3 different whiskeys, and then also 3 different cigars. And I remember the whiskeys, we had Weller Special Reserve, the wheated bourbon. There was a Highland Park, I want to say 10-year or 12-year, I'm not entirely sure.
It was 10.
And for sure an Aberfeldy 12, which I've also had since, which is also really good.
That's great.
Yeah.
So three different styles, 3 different expressions. So from 2 different countries, so technically. But what is great? Are you recording now?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Not sure. Now, what is great in the whiskey world that not to make a transition from the wine world, but it's a limitless world as well. So in words of spirits, there's so many expressions from so many different areas, from so many different techniques of maturation, where you can find from the same distillery different expressions. Today we speak more about cask maturation, which really has a big impact, big effect on the whiskey that you want to make, that you want to offer to your clientele. The cask today is really actually cask is the 4th element. I used to say to tell people, what are the 3 main ingredients to make whiskey? Which is water, yeast, and barley. But I would include the 4th one, which is actually the wood barrel, because without maturation in barrel, you don't make whiskey. So wine has a different approach. You can create the character of a wine through the wood influence, but sometimes wood is not really the best ally to make a good wine, depending if you want to make a more fruity version of wine. But in the whiskey world, it's really important, because that's really where you build the personality of your whiskey. And today we speak more and more about European oak, Slavonian oak, or even lately Japanese oak, that has an amazing potential, and that brings some amazing flavors. The famous Mizunara oak cask, made of 300-year-old oak, Mizunara oak trees. You need to wait 300 years to have before cutting a Mizunara oak tree, versus 50 years for a white American oak tree. So the reason why, but the flavor that it develops, and now we find more and more on the market, some Scottish whiskies actually barreled in Mizunara oak. So it's really becoming the new trend. But careful your wallet. It's not cheap, whiskey made in Mizunara oak, but it develops some fantastic flavors of like peeled coconut that you cannot find in any other oak cask. So fantastic, really expression that I recommend you to experiment, to taste, and to enjoy. Any whiskey matured in a Mizunara oak is unbelievable. Really, it takes you to a totally different flavor profile, to a totally different flavor dimension. But it has a price, right?
Is our so typically the inside of a whiskey barrel are charred, or for wine barrels charred or no charred?
No charred. So no wine barrels. It's just about the kind of wood that you use. There's no because if you char it, so first it will release way more. It will caramelize the natural sugar content into the wood. That it's not it's not the primary goal for maturing wine. It has to be so for wine maturation in the oak is you get the essence of what you get from the original oak, not charred. So either like a French oak or Spanish oak, it all comes from like new barrels. So new barrels and non-char. So it's important just to keep that. No, we don't char the barrels for. Now the charring approach for whiskeys has way more impact in the sense of like whiskey first the new make before being whiskey gets actually will absorb because the high level of alcohol when you barrel a new make, it's not 40%, it's way more. It's so you barrel it as we call it at cask strength, at a much higher alcohol content. Then after you can dilute it if you want to put it down to 40% or to a lower alcohol content. But the alcohol effect and as the barrel, as we know, the barrel breathes. So there's a full combination between the level of charring that you want to bring, the level of toastiness you want to bring to the whiskey. So but yeah, it's and not only the length of the charring process, but also which kind of really wood, which kind of oak you want to select to really to give your whiskey a certain character. So you can have different levels of charring, but also the I would say the structure of the oak itself inside the barrel has an impact. So which charring process you do. So the whiskey will the new make will interact differently, and will have can have depending of the charring length at the beginning, can have a totally different flavor aspect. And a lot of distilleries in Scotland are working on really creating or making some barrels with a different charring process, just to make a new character of their whiskey, not denaturing the original flavor, but just bringing an additional characteristic and an additional personality to the whiskey.
We were talking earlier today about British Columbia specifically and new distilleries popping up.
Yes.
And how the liquor stores out there are kind of flooded with gin, and that's indicative of in the near future being flooded with whiskey. Can we talk about kind of the Canadian whiskey scene, how it's doing right now, and kind of what maybe the next handful of years looks like?
Yeah, so Canadian whiskey is actually taking opportunity of the worldwide growing interest in whiskies, all I would say. So I can see with my experience in different levels of the wine and the whiskey market those past years that more and more people are getting into whiskey, either originally beer drinking people or wine drinking people, are really just displacing their drinking habits to more towards whiskey. So they tend to really first to get interested, they start to attend a couple of tastings, then they visit some distilleries, and then after they get into that infernal spiral of whiskey tasting, whiskey purchasing, whiskey collecting, and then after it's too late, they get addicted to it. And the Canadian whiskey really is taking a great advantage of this growing interest, because first we have amazing distilleries all over the country who are innovating, who are investing in new equipments or importing great knowledge with fantastic professionals, and really Canadian whiskey, the industry is growing. We can see that since maybe a decade now, that is really definitely growing, and that the Canadian distilleries understood as well that they can really take benefit of that growing interest, and they can have definitely their premium spot in the international whiskey market. We could see that through all those international whiskey awards, Spirits of San Francisco contest, whiskey awards contest. So it's something really that the Canadian whiskey industry has really taken opportunity to be part as a major whiskey country. We are still we are not like in the US. We don't produce as much as in the US, but we are really gaining in popularity. I can see that through foreign clientele who are looking for Canadian whiskey, so that you couldn't see that like 15 years ago. So yeah, absolutely. And each province now understood that they can and really take advantage of this market in allowing new licenses, legal licenses for new distilleries, and from Quebec, I would say even from Newfoundland. I was in Newfoundland a long time ago. Now there's a rum distillery that just not too far from St. John's, that opened not a long time ago, and now they are making fantastic rums. So talking about rums, or rum distilleries also. Eastern Canada is more towards has more tradition of rum making or rum consuming rather than whiskey. But when you see in Quebec, there's a few distilleries now that are starting to make their own whiskies, and Western Canada, yeah. So British Columbia is booming. Is literally booming. So you can find a lot of urban distilleries. Or distilleries located more in the Okanagan Valley that start to be also awarded by international contests. So it shows really that there's like a waking up industry that is very promising. When you see also the numbers of whiskey clubs that are created from small groups to larger groups, whiskey associations. So people get really more and more, I can see that year after year, more and more interested to taste, to explore, not only American or Scotch whiskies or Irish whiskies, but whiskies at all. And we are lucky that we either government or monopolies, they understood that the growing demand in like international whiskies is here, and they start to really to bring a nice variety of whiskies from all over the world. And locally on the provinces, at the province level, you can really browse in any private retailer and find an amazing amount of, like, for now just their white spirits, because they need 3 years as per the law in Canada. You need 3 years to put your whiskey in barrel before releasing a Canadian whiskey, like a Scotch. When bourbon is only 2 years in brand new oak. So it's definitely a growing industry that has some pretty bright future, and encouraged with a lot of new wine clubs, whiskey clubs, also wine clubs who will become actually more whiskey oriented as well. I'm running actually whiskey tastings with wine clubs, and they're interested. Some of them are like really wine and whiskey drinkers. So you couldn't see that like a few years ago. So people drinking wine, they were just drinking wine, and whiskey people were just drinking whiskey. So but now you see that sometimes they like to they ask me for bringing a couple of whiskeys into the wine selection just at the end.
So do you know why, or could you guess why there'd be like such a resurgence at whiskeys and bourbons? It seems I've seen a couple of documentaries pop up talking about how the bourbon industry seems to be growing as of late, and doesn't show really any signs of stopping. So what changed?
Just, I believe it's kind of a trend that is going to last for long, I believe. Because if you compare with a couple of decades ago, the distilleries in the US that were producing bourbon or American whiskey were producing you couldn't really feel the sense of quality. So today, when you visit, and I've been visiting distilleries all over the US and doing a few whiskey trails, bourbon trails in Kentucky, visiting all those like almost 20 distilleries now in Kentucky, they are really oriented to make quality whiskeys. So quality whiskeys, and releasing also some like high-end, like small batch or cask strength editions that are very hard to find. And so you really compare with a couple of decades ago, you feel really that the distilleries are focusing to produce quality whiskeys. Even though it's about quantity, you go to Maker's Mark, you go to Jim Beam, the quality is still there, even though you know, for their core range products. But there's a sense of really they took really awareness that they cannot produce like low quality whiskey. So every distillery has put the standards of quality much higher. That people are sensitive to that. When they purchase either a bottle of bourbon at $30 US a bottle or at like $300 US, you have the same like dedication to quality in the bottle. That maybe a few decades ago quality wasn't really like a key word. So people were afraid to buy or those everyday whiskey drinkers were not really paying attention to the quality. They just wanted a bottle of whiskey.
Mm-hmm.
But today you go to any distillery, they will talk to you about quality. So I believe that it makes really in the buying decision power of people. It's like I'm buying a product because it's made really with certain standards of quality and the quality really buying a quality product really makes the whole difference that we were not talking about it like 2 decades ago.
Mm-hmm.
So not only that, but also just the revival of the old traditions, because the US is a very big country for making whiskeys a bit everywhere now. You know, you can find distilleries in almost in every single state. So producing locally made whiskey with local raw materials. There's, for example, a distillery that I would like to visit soon in Texas called Balcones. They make a blue corn whiskey.
Wow!
So blue corn, it's a native, local, really varietal of corn, which is blue, literally blue, and that actually they make whiskey, out of it. So it's very interesting that now.
Is it a bourbon?
No, it's an American whiskey.
Okay.
So difference, but it's very interesting to see how really each state finds the originally to create really their own whiskey. Washington State I've visited many times, the Westland Distillery in downtown Seattle, that became actually the world single malt whiskey award. So they got that award just a couple of weeks ago at the Whisky Awards in London, UK. So they started from nothing. It was just a warehouse in industrial zone in downtown Seattle, in south downtown Seattle, and now they became really like a worldwide, like a really ultra premium whiskey maker, and producing like a small variety of very, very serious stuff, very, very high quality whiskeys that I really enjoy. Using a local oak called Gardena oak, a very native oak from Washington State, from the Olympic Peninsula, which is also a very very local oak tree. So every state now discovers that they have in each state you have like local materials that you can use, for making a unique whiskey. So that's what people like really discovering, because you can travel all those the 50 states in the US and having like totally different whiskeys. Just in Kentucky as well, you have more and more distilleries innovating in different oak barreling, oak aging, and that's really what people want to try. They want to try diversity. They want to experiment new expressions of whiskeys, new expressions of bourbons. And I believe it's just starting, so it's going to really to boom in the coming years, because it's really a good vicious circle where you get people into whiskey to get to discover new expressions, new releases. So you make them really addicted to try even more new things.
Right.
That's what I'm doing when I'm running my whiskey events, my private events. People say, okay, yeah, so. And I tell them that such distillery, whether in Scotland or Ireland, Japan or Taiwan or India, are going to release a new whiskey made of such, such mash bill or such blend or such a cereal or made in such wood. or cask. So you make them really impassioned to taste them, to taste the whiskey, to buy it eventually. So and that's how actually distilleries they get actually victim of their success, because making people drooling about a new product, and I can see that especially when this product is limited in quantity. It's like the people who they get nuts.
My wife and I, bless you, my wife and I went on our honeymoon in Ireland in December 2017, and we had landed just freakishly, so we went in December, and we land there, and there was snow, and there was like -0 weather, which is unusual for there, so the whole country was kind of on lockdown for a couple inches of snow. We finally land in Kilkenny, and we had to go get just groceries and stuff like that for the first couple of days, and the only place open was a grocery store that was in the gas station right beside where the abbey we were staying. So we go there, and behind the counter there's this little sampler pack from Kilbeggan Distillery. It was like 4 different whiskeys, so it was like €20. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna try that. And there was a Connemara peated whiskey, Irish whiskey there, that was delicious. And now that I'm into whiskey, I find that I can't find it in Canada, can't really get it shipped here, and I'm trying to find a friend in Ireland to send me a bottle, because that stuff was absolutely delicious.
Yeah, it's that's the thing. So you cannot find any whiskey. So of course, when you get the chance to travel, really, it's the opportunity really to buy some bottles that might never be actually available in Canada.
Right.
Or when they come in very limited allocation somewhere in some province, and you have to be at the right time, the right place. If you want to get lucky to catch a bottle. But the whiskey you're talking about used to be available at the LCBO. A few years ago, I remember actually both expressions of the Connemara. So the regular one and the peated one.
They have a cask strength too.
And the cask strength, yeah, that's right, absolutely. So, but yeah, it's in general the best timing when you can get those whiskies or Irish whiskies. That's when we are getting close to St. Patrick, because generally LCBO is bringing always some additional Irish whiskies. But yeah, it still remains pretty hard. You may find those ones in the other provinces eventually. If you get to travel there, it's always good maybe just to have a look in private retailers as well. I know that those whiskey might be available in British Columbia. I've seen some not a long time ago. But it's any limited release whiskey, either for people who drink them or people who collect them. It's always they are like, I would say they are like a painting. They are really ephemeral. I mean, when they get released, they're released in very small quantity, so they are ephemeral on the shelf. They don't last long. So it's and for both clienteles who are clienteles of collectors or drinkers, it's always you have to really jump on them. I've seen in Kentucky. I was trying to get some Willet bourbon, the straight rye cask strength 4-year-old, which is a fantastic bourbon in Willet Distillery close to Bardstown. I don't know if you've been there. It's a fantastic family distillery there.
Say Bardstown, that's the bourbon capital, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's just a few minutes by car, not far from Emmett Hill Distillery. So just behind the downtown Bardstown. So beautiful distillery there, but they don't make they make a lot of other bourbons, but their Willet collection is phenomenal, and it's very hard to get. So in Canada it's impossible to get. But when you get there, I missed actually the last bottle of the release 20 minutes late.
Oh.
When I came to the distillery, it was like 3 years ago. So I was late just 20 minutes. I came in the morning, they told me, yeah, we're going to release the 4-year-old, so the straight rye cask strength 4-year-old, which was like $59-60 US, or more than that. And they told me, yeah, come back just after lunch, come back here, we'll be doing the release in the afternoon. And I came just 20 minutes late. So, and people were lining up. So it's just to tell you how sometimes it's really getting those whiskeys that are unique in terms of, when you do a cask strength or a single cask release, it's about 300 bottles.
Yeah.
That's it, 250, 300 bottles max. So it's not much. So and the pleasure you can get either just to keep jealously your bottle, to collect it or to drink it, which always better to drink it because that's what every single bottle is made for. But I see a lot of people, a lot of collectors who will never open their bottles because it's just a pleasure to have the bottle. But I tell them, you get actually 3 times more pleasure when you collect the bottle for a little time, then you get to open it.
Yeah.
Because
special occasion or whatever.
Well, special occasion, you don't need a special occasion. Anytime.
We're meant to be drank, right? Yeah. Meant to be shared.
Anytime you open the bottle, it's a special occasion. You create a special occasion.
Yeah.
So in general, not alone. So preferably not alone. So you run, nice little dinner or event, with your best friends, family, and you open the bottle. This way you create the special occasion. So you don't need to wait for a special occasion. That's what I tell a lot of people. Don't wait for a special occasion. Sometimes it may never happen. So just create it anytime you want. You had a hard day at work, so you create yourself your special occasion for a tough day at work.
There you go.
It's that simple. And of course, just bring some friends, some good, some people who really appreciate good whiskeys, and you create the whole occasion yourself.
When it comes to scotches, you'll see the older it gets, more expensive it gets. I know price isn't directly related to age specifically; it has to do with availability and a bunch of things. But kind of as a general rule, you got 12-year or 15-year, 18, 21. The kind of older it gets, the more complex and quote unquote better it is. When it comes to bourbon, that's not so much the case, is it? Like you can kind of go too old when it comes to a bourbon, no?
Well, you can go up to like 25, 25 years now. I've seen those like the oldest expressions of certain bourbons. 20, 25 years. After it's all a matter of taste, even for a young Scotch single malt versus a bourbon, it's all about what is your flavor profile, what is your flavor personality. Myself, I like more like the old ones, because you have actually, first I like cask strength. I way prefer cask strength expressions than just 40% like diluted bourbons, because you get really the essence of it. Then after some bourbons can be pretty high in alcohol, like take the Elijah Craig barrel proof, which is like at 65-66% alcohol. So it's pretty high. So if it's too high, so you can just add a couple of drops of water. But really the cask strength expression, whether in Scotch whiskey or bourbon, I found really that you have the most complete, the most interesting flavor profile and complexity. So then after the age, I tasted a lot of older bourbons versus younger from the same bourbon maker, and sometimes just the younger ones are actually way better.
Yeah.
So it all depends on the mash bill. In general, the older like wheated bourbons, like all that like BTAC collection, so those did I say like William, the Babylon Winkle, those are the oldest are not really that interesting. The Babylon Winkle, for example, 23, I like it less than the 20-year-old. So, but also some ryes are the same. So they are sometimes the oak influence with the age doesn't really play a perfect game with the bourbon. Sometimes it's better to have like a younger bourbon, just because of the flavor profile of the bourbon itself is a bit too subtle to absorb too much oak. So if you take for example, the Orphan Barrel collection with the rhetoric, so all those collections, all those barrels, they come from the Stitzelweller distillery that has been shut down for a long time. So the Orphan Barrel collection just took and bottled, so year after year. So every year they did it from the 20 years old to the 25-year-old rhetoric. So 25 expressions, and I tasted the 25 versus the 20, and the 20 was even better than the 25. So
those are a single barrel?
Single barrel,
yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So all are single barrel. So it's very subjective, you know. It's very subjective. You can, you know, some people really like the oak influence, but you know, of course, bourbon is about oak influence. But on the other hand, if you taste on the oak, and you don't have like the flavor complexity of like dry fruits or leather or sandalwood or something a bit more complex, I find it that first you pay high price for a bourbon that you don't really like. So it's all about, you know, which bourbon personality you have, and sometimes it's not worth it to spend that much money for a good drinking, you know, bourbon. 10-year-old sometimes. I really like the Old Van Winkle compared with the 12-year-old Lot B. I believe that it has a way longer finish, way more complexity than the 12 years old Van Winkle, Lot B. So things like that, or there are some other. What else? There was another whiskey that I tasted, Nictors, for example. Mm. So I way prefer the Nictors 10-year-old. So the cask strength 10-year-old than a 20. So it's.
And you're probably paying half the price.
Well, exactly. Well, the 20 is like $2,000 US. You know, when the 10 is $50 Canadian. So yeah, exactly. So it's not necessarily because it's old that it's going to be better. Sometimes because it's old, you get really into a totally different flavor dimension. But sometimes it doesn't really help.
Yeah.
So it's all about it's all about just personal taste.
If you were to for someone going out there, someone just wants to get into this, they want to kind of sample some whiskeys. So if you were to pick like a representative from each category of your I guess there's a bunch of different regions in Scotland for different scotches, but like a Canadian whiskey, a bourbon, a Scotch, maybe an Irish whiskey. Let's say Canadian, a Scotch, an Irish whiskey, and then a bourbon. What would be your value pick? So I'm going to get the most bang for my buck here.
Oh, well, first of all, I'm not working for any like distillery, so the names that I may mention I have no like sales interest in it. It's just like because I like them. But for Scotch, it's hard to say because there are like, you know, there are particularly five whiskey regions in Scotland that are making fantastic whiskey. So, but from the Highlands, I would start maybe from the Lowlands for a whiskey debutant, because it's those whiskey from Lowlands like Oakendoshan or like Glenkinchie are pretty soft and, you know, easygoing. So for somebody who is really getting introduced into the whiskey world, that would be a good start. Then after we can go to Speyside. So there are so many, Glenlivet or Glenfarclas eventually making great whiskies, but doesn't mean that the others they don't. So, but those who like peat, of course, we can go. So light peat, we can go either to Campbelltown or to Islay with selected distilleries that are not making too peaty malts like Bowmore, who are pretty light instead of waiting to become more a peat radical and finishing your day with a good bottle of Lafroig or Clay. Then after Ireland, I like a lot like so there are different ones. Kilbeggan. So Kilbeggan, just the 12-year-old or the famous 18-year-old is absolutely delicious. Even Jameson, they do some really good expressions of whiskey. If you go a bit more, they're like in the very rare editions that are even like stunning. Bushmills, of course, they do some the 21-year-old.
They were 21.
Fantastic.
The LCBO I know sells the 10-year-old single malt. I almost picked that one up, and I picked up a bourbon instead, but I've still been looking at it. What do you think of it?
The 10-year-old, it's been a long time I didn't taste it, so I don't have much really record about it. But I still have a bottle of 21 at home that I'm sipping slowly, and it's fantastic. I really prefer like non-peat, non-peaty Irish malts than peat ones. So, but yeah, there are like dozens of others that I really like as well in Ireland. The latest, the Tilling whiskey is absolutely the revival. The 15-year-old revival is absolutely stunning.
They just got some award for
24.
Yeah.
24-year-old, like the best like single malt in the world. So yeah, fantastic. Really fantastic rebirth of this old distillery that has been really reactivated, and the Tilling family is a very, very interesting team and passionate people who are really craft masterizing the art of making amazing whiskey. So I have visited them like a few years ago, and unfortunately I didn't have much time. So the next time I'm coming back, I really will take the time just to explore the whole collection there. And bourbon, so wow, if you mean like Kentucky straight bourbon, so from Kentucky there are Evan Williams. So for those beginners, again, it would be a good one. For those who like more like the sweeter side of bourbon, with Maker's Mark, so made of mainly wheated bourbon are a bit sweeter. So that could be a good open door at a reasonable price. But Buffalo Trace, just the entry, the Buffalo Trace whiskey.
It's actually pretty good, yeah.
This bourbon is just really great, really just by itself, but in cocktails or that was actually my very first, a long time ago, my very, very first bourbons that I had.
Buffalo Trace.
Buffalo Trace, yeah, just the regular entry level, and it was fantastic. There are the 1792, so the small batch.
So looking at that one, the small batch, that's a good one?
You have the full proof, which is fantastic too. There was like 3 cases available at the LCBO last Christmas, so I got a chance to have 2 bottles of the full proof, so which is absolutely rare to find. I'm looking forward to find a wheated one.
A wheated 1792?
Yeah, they do a wheated one. They do a port as well, like a port cask. So yeah, they do different expressions. And Willett, if you get really to Willett makes a couple of like other brand names, like Kentucky, straight Kentucky whiskey, like Noah's Mill and Old Bardstown, that are not available in Canada, but very, very affordable, like around like $29, $25 US. So it's a really delicious bourbons to experiment. And if you get lucky to get the Willett cask strength, just grab a bottle, whatever the price is in retail, but it's unbelievable. I had the chance to. I still have a few bottles as well.
Do you know if some of the Canadian whiskeys, like the mash bills, are comparable to a bourbon? Because I was looking when I was mentioning I had that Collingwood whiskey, which tasted really neat. So I was checking out the bottle, and it had 2 cities listed on it. It had wherever it was here, Ontario, but it also had Claremont, Kentucky. So I thought, this tastes very similar to bourbon. Maybe is it bottled on behalf of them? But I don't know kind of how that works.
Well, actually, I know that you have some American distilleries that are like using some like Canadian whiskey, so they buy some Canadian whiskey. So we have a good example with the Little Book of Noé, Bookers. They do like a blend. It's American bourbon and Canadian whiskey.
Oh wow!
But it's been released actually at the LCBO a long time ago.
What's it called again?
Little Book of Noé.
Little Book of Noé.
Noé Booker, so the great son of Jimmy.
Okay.
So and they do a little. So it's a blend of American bourbon and Canadian whiskey. And pretty old stuff. So I had a chance to get a bottle, and very intense, beautiful. It's been awarded as well at the Whisky Awards recently. But I'm not sure exactly what is the whole business between Canada and the US. How much Canadian whiskey they can put into like they can blend with an American whiskey and just to retail it as like U.S. whiskey, not a Kentucky bourbon, of course, but just an American whiskey, So I can really tell you, what are the agreements between Canadian distilleries versus or American distilleries. What is the percentage that they are used to? They are allowed to put into the blend. But I know that Canada has make a really amazing quality whiskeys that are more and more sought after in the U.S. Because first in the U.S. maybe they don't have the enough quantities also to sell. The market is like 10 times bigger than Canada, so they might get like some additional raw materials from Canada just to make their a new expression like under just US whiskey.
When you're talking about wheated bourbons, is that where they take the rye and replace it with wheat?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there's more. Yeah, so there's more instead of like 51% rye or straight rye or. So you just add more wheat in it, so in the mash bill, and so that makes really a very interesting, very soft. So for people who are really not like, really want to have a beautiful, soft and sweet, because it's pretty sweet bourbon. That's what I recommend.
Have you tried a whiskey that has agreed with you so little that you decided never to try again?
No. No, not so far. No. I know all the whiskeys, all the bourbons that I tasted, they were so some of them were maybe less interesting for me, just because of my own flavor preference. But it doesn't mean that I really I will never drink them again.
Mm-hmm.
It's like no, they're really, and again every time you get to visit a distillery, you have really. They really focus on really the quality, the investment they do really to make something good, Then after it's about, personal preference.
Excellent. All right. Oh, one more thing before we call it a close. I found very interesting today when we were talking about being a sommelier, and you said it's more than just knowing about wine and whiskey. You actually mentioned wine, whiskey, chocolate, vinegar, oils, coffee. Can you talk a little bit about more kind of the knowledge base of a sommelier as a whole? I know someone was interested in pursuing that career path, or where do they find that knowledge? Where do they find that kind of a training?
Yeah, sure. So sommelier technically is to know about wine and spirits primarily, I would say. But a good sommelier, when you get to if you want to attend the international contest or the world championship, contest, you need to go you need to know a bit more about other things, the other fields of food, like you precisely mentioned. It's I believe it's important as well, because actually all those fields, whether coffee, olive oil, chocolate or tea as well, those fields are really. There are like parallel fields with a different raw material, but the approach is quite the same, So you whether you start from a fruit, from a cereal, from a plant, from a bean, so then after whether you macerate it, you distill it, you roast it, you filter it, so it all comes from a raw material that you just manufacture on a certain way, traditional way, just to obtain a certain beautiful quality product. So I believe that all those fields should be not at 100% known by any sommelier, but I've been learning myself, because it's kind of, I believe it's part of that. There is no really, you can find some tea experts, olive oil experts, people who are producing those products, but I believe a sommelier has the same process, has to know a bit of those other fields. So and I've seen a lot of sommeliers, wine sommeliers, attending olive oil master classes, vinegar master classes, or tea conferences, because it's pretty similar. So the approach is very similar to learn all those the wonders of each of those fields. So, and actually it helps, on the other hand, for sommelier, it helps to diversify your nose, to train your nose to even other flavors that you might not find always in the wine or in the spirits. So tasting extra virgin olive oil from Spain versus Greece versus Turkey versus Israel or Italy. It's a fantastic trip to flavors through olive oil, and you know that there's a lot of different varietals of olives all over the world. So you have also the same approach. So with a different fruit, with a different raw material, but the tasting approach is pretty much the same. So chocolate, coffee, it's all the same. We come from it's a bean that has been just manufactured, transformed, and offering a world of flavors depending where it grows. So I find it very not like it's not mandatory, because when you get your sommelier exam or certification, technically they don't teach you everything about chocolate, about coffee or olive oil or tea, but it's a great added value to your luggage of knowledge in wines and spirits, just to have also, because you find some flavors, some aromas that can be similar to other fruits, to those other fields of flavors. So and it can only be a great added value for yourself, just to know a bit more about coffee. You like sipping a good wine, you like sipping a good bourbon. Why not sipping a good coffee, taking the time to taste the coffee, not drinking just the coffee, just exploring the flavors of a single origin bean of coffee versus tasting a single origin bean of cocoa. So the process is pretty much the same, and it's pretty exciting also to explore those different horizons of flavors.
Seems to be a lot of the whiskey, whatever it is, your chocolate, coffee, whiskey. For me, it's whiskey, but or wine. It's taking the moment, like when we're rushing, we're always looking at a clock, we're always looking at your phone screen, to take a second and just be present and to put all your attention, all of your senses just on this one thing, and it just kind of make everything disappear for a minute.
Exactly.
It's just a really nice meditation, just to stop.
It's a great escape. It's a great escape for something, just and it doesn't take much. Just instead of getting your Tim Hortons coffee, you go to a more like a specialty coffee bar, espresso bar. And those people, actually, you can ask them some questions. They are passionate people in general. They know what they're talking about, so you can ask them questions. And that is interesting. Not talking only about coffee, but tea. We go to really tea stores, not those like chain tea stores. I'm not going to say any name, but some really specialty tea stores. Those people are passionate. Those tea sommeliers, but they know what what they sell. They know how to prepare tea, because depending the kind of tea, you need a certain water temperature, not any kind of water. So they teach you all that thing that is important really to enjoy at best the tea that you are buying. So same for olive oil. So when you get to attend an olive oil tasting, really they get to make you getting familiar with each varietal of olives that the producer is making, and then after trying to guess the flavor. So that is interesting as well, that not only just learning by yourself, but also getting to meet people who are selling fine products of each of those fruits or cereals, and talking to them, because you have a lot to learn from them.
Mm-hmm.
And they give you some very interesting information with passion. And myself, I'm doing that all the time. When there's a new tea salon or specialty tea salon, or in general, you have good chances to find really people knowledgeable about what they sell. If not, what is the interest to sell fine teas? Remember in Vancouver, there's a very interesting tea store in downtown Vancouver. That is so the manager is an encyclopedic in tea. So you could just sit there. I used to come and visit him once in a while when I was working there, and it starts just for 5 minutes, and you watch you have a look on your watch, and 2 hours later you're still there, and the guy is just taking you. He's almost hypnotizing you, really just taking your mind to the tea world,
right?
And you forget where you are, you forget what time is it, and just he's really he's amazing. He's amazing. It's and I would stay days long just listening to him. So people like that are very inspiring, and you have a lot to learn from them. So reason why you don't need to pay expensive classes and courses, you just go to specialty stores and people will be more than happy and very happy, because many times clients, they come, they get their pack of tea, their pound of coffee, and they leave.
Right.
But those people are just waiting for somebody to be curious to ask them questions. And then you make friend, they offer you, if you become friend with them, they offer you really great, flights of tastings. So yeah, you should taste this coffee and this one and this one and this one. And so it's like, they open you the doors of a new world that you barely know for free. Well, unless you want to buy a few pounds of coffee. But at least you enjoy your time. You don't pay for that free education.
Yeah.
So same for a chocolatier, you go to a great chocolate maker, an artisan chocolate maker. He will talk to you about beans, he will take you to the back store, show you those big bags, like in those like cloth bags, where you can see really the raw bean of cocoa. How do they just manufacture it into chocolate? And so those people are passionate, and it's free education.
Yeah.
So you could spend, you come a full week there, maybe half an hour a day, and at the end of the week, you will learn quite a lot.
Yeah, no doubt. Same, I guess, if you were to, I don't know how busy they'd be, but looking at a master distiller, just to go to a distillery and hang out there and look at the process from start to finish.
Yeah. Well, just to make an appointment, and you ask kindly the distiller, okay, what times are you available for, and sometimes themselves, they offer some classes. So of course with a little admission fee, of course, but there's no better teacher that you can have from the distillery itself. So winemaker is the same. So any artisan who's working with passion has a lot to share. With people who are interested to learn. And I've been doing that in many places all over the world, in chocolate artisans, coffee, torrefaction places. Like roasting. And the knowledge is just there. You just need to open the door, get into the store, introduce yourself, and they will be more than happy to share what they know about the thing. There's another example of a little coffee place in North Vancouver. That's where I buy all my coffee. It's fantastic. Nobody knows about this place, but
until now.
They are making, actually they are selling some fantastic chocolate croissant and some plain croissant, butter croissant, amazing stuff. Very little hidden place in an industrial zone, but it's a gold mine.
What's it called?
No advertisement. But yeah, it's so and they are making single bean origin coffee pounds that every time I went to Vancouver, I don't miss a single time to go there and buy 3, 4, 5 packs of different Nicaragua, Jamaica, Costa Rica, Peru, Bolivia coffees. And you get to see the owner, manager is a young guy, and he doesn't have blood in his veins. It's just coffee, roasted coffee that is really just flowing in his veins. And he's so passionate. It's he could feel. I call him the cafelier, the sommelier of coffee, the cafelier. Great guy. So sometimes just you have free education just behind the door. And a lot of people think or internet is not sometimes that reliable. You can find a lot of not really pertinent information, so you have to really to filter, what you get on the internet. But nothing can be better than just having somebody in front of you who travel the world, his world of coffee, chocolate, olive oil, and he will give you a full lecture for free. Or maybe you buy from him, pack of, a couple of bottles of olive oil or a pack of coffee. You will be happy, and you will get free education next time again.
Yeah. But before we head out, can you just let people know where they can find you? Where can I get a hold of you if I want you for a tasting, or if I want to come get your wine?
Sure.
What can I do?
So I'm everywhere technically. So I'm really traveling the whole country, but I'm based in Niagara-on-the-Lake. You can find me through my website, ambiancevin.com, AMBIANCEVINS.com. That's my website, so they can just send me, contact request, or if they are interested. I'm running a lot of private events, a lot of corporate events, whiskey, wine, many other spirits, Calvados, Cognac, Armagnac, tequila. Actually, fine tequila is really going more and more trendy now, so we could do another podcast another time about tequila. But it's so you can just contact me through my website, and very flexible in terms of organizing any tasting with any products. I'm not working with any specific agency, just with Palatine, but I'm free to feature to pour any other wines with the budget that they are comfortable with. So that's the best way to reach me.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, TJ.